Okay, so it's time now for the last two presentations of this symposium, already the last two. And I'm happy to introduce to you Mr. Samuel Balieiro. He will give the presentation about comparative cost structure in the sugar industry based on a study that has been made by the Thünen Institute here in Braunschweig. So, it's yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. As was mentioned before, I'm kind of jumping in for my colleague, Thomas. He actually had some problems with his family, so he had to travel back home. But we actually do the work together. We prepare the slides together, so it should be fine. As you can see from my name, I'm not German yet. I'm Brazilian. I have been in Germany for 8 years. And in those 8 years, I stopped using Facebook, Instagram, and I don't have Amazon Prime anymore. So I should be getting my German passport soon. So I think it's very interesting, as I mentioned before, the discussion. We are not too much into digitalization as an institute because we are more looking at the impact of digital solutions to farmers. So it's more maybe the other side of it because we are somehow trying to quantify what is the impact of those solutions to farmers. And what I want to do today is to go into 4 points, maybe to explain a bit what we do and how can you read our data. And the second and third point, it's not actually so much in digitalization, it's more understanding the supply chain and the cost involved. In the fourth part, I will try to give you some ideas on how to quantify the solutions and also some data we have on maybe other crops and how is the impact. I know it's hard because I'm the one speaking after lunch, so feel free to stand up and go get some coffee if you need. If you need to look at your phone, no problem at all. So, and I'm so sorry that my background is agriculture economics, and for us, we only have graphs. So I don't have any picture, I think, but I think it should be fine. So, AgriBenchmark is a network. There's a picture, yeah, see. It's a network of agriculture economists all over the world, and what we do, we decided in 2008 that there is very little information on production costs. So those people sat together and say, look, let's do a network, non-profitable, where we provide the data from our country and get the whole data of the world back. So it's a whole non-profitable network that is based on this voluntary definition of data. And the Thünen Institute in Braunschweig is coordinating this network. And the main idea is to combine production cost data and other types of data from the production systems. But we also want to have people from each country staying the network because the data itself is not so easy to read if you don't have somebody understanding what is behind the data. And I think I will not go in too much into the methodology because, you will sleep for sure. But the idea is that we use what we call typical farms. So please, when you're looking at my slides, this is not a national average. We are talking about the main regions. No? So for instance, if you know Brazil, for sure you know, our farms represent the region of Ribeirão Preto, Sertãozinho, and the region of Rio Verde, and in the northeast. So in Germany, we have 9 regions, so we are not representing the country because we believe that averages don't tell you anything. No? Because if you average out, usually you don't get any information. That's our point of view. And I think the main idea of this network is to use exactly the same method everywhere. So we always collect the data in the same manner, and we consider profit losses the same way. Because if you take the data from the USDA, the data from the Eurostat, you might find very different things there, how they account for seed costs, for instance. And when we saw the sugar industry in the digital age, we thought an industry as a whole industry, not the processing costs. So we are talking about everything from farming, transportation, and processing. So I'll be also talk a lot about farming. So those are the countries where we have currently partners, and we represent, I would say, the main producing regions in the world. And for instance, in Germany, if I would give an example from the north of Germany, we are in those regions. And as you can see here, in our data, we always see these three informations. So when you see the information will be always, the first two letters represent the country, the numbers represent the acreage of a typical farm, and this one represents the region. So it will be in Germany 1,300, Magdeburg. No? So that's the type of information we have. And what I'm presenting here is only for sugar, but we have information from all the crops in those countries. And just to give you an idea how it looks like in reality, a lot of data collection we do ourselves. So this was myself in Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and we actually sit together with the farmers and ask them what are they doing, and actually going through all the production system. No? So we actually have a lot of information on how farmers actually farm, and we also sometimes visit some mills. It's very impressive for me as a Brazilian to see all this. I've been to all the countries that we have sugar, and it's very, very interesting to see how it changes. No? Even though it's the same product, there's a lot of management behind. And we also do the opposite, so people from other countries coming to Germany. This was a visit of the Thai delegation. They are now defining how is the sugar payment scheme is going to be in Thailand, and they came to Germany to discuss how it's done here in Germany. No? So this is, and those are the people that we work together. I think the only one missing here is BMA, but we actually have a lot of this type of organizations like the European Commission. Our main task as an institute is to give policy advice to the Ministry of Agriculture, so my salary is paid by the ministry, and we also have private partnerships in order to run the network. No? So the network is non-profitable, but we need some financing to pay for our data collection and all those things. No? So this is just a nutshell. If you want to have some more information, just Google it. No? So production costs, I will start at the farm level. So when I call it raw material, I'm talking about either sugarcane or sugar beet. No? So those are the two raw materials. And those are the regions that I will be looking at. So as I mentioned, in Brazil, we are somewhere here and here. We will include some areas from Africa here. And we have farms here in Vietnam, in Tanzania, in Thailand, sorry. And we also have a lot of regions in the European continent, including Russia, Ukraine, when it comes to sugar beets. No? And I think for us, this whole network started when I moved to the Institute in 2014 for sugar. And we spent a lot of time trying to make the data compatible between sugar beet and sugarcane, because those crops are very different. And when I started working, I talked to Thomas and I say, our main goal should be to have one graph that looks like this, that we have sugarcane and sugar beet in the same graph. For this to happen, we have to actually make sure that the data is all around the same values, no? So the same way of collecting. What you can see here is looking first at the production system, you have very different yields. So I'm talking about Brazil, Thailand, South Africa, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Kenya. And those are the yields on recoverable sugar. No? So it's not sugar cane yields, not sugar beet yields, and that's recoverable sugar. And what you can see here on the top will be then recoverable values. No? So in German, Zuckergehalt. And as you can see here in Europe, you might wonder why it's so low. It's in reality what we do for most of the sugarcane countries. The farmers don't get paid for the processing losses. No? And in Europe, most of the farmers get paid by the total sugar amount, but the factory cannot extract everything. So to make it comparable, we actually take out the industry losses. No? And for me, when I saw this the first time, I got a bit scared because as a Brazilian, we always thought we would be like for sure the most productive sugar country in the world. And in reality, in a per hectare basis, sugar beet is much more productive. So yields are higher or even the same level, but you have much more sugar content. No? So in reality, you can see here sugar beet has an advantage of somewhere 2 to 3 tons per hectare. No? When you look at the costs, Direct costs would be everything on the farm, and also you have plant protection, seeds, and then you have operating costs, machinery, and you have land costs. And this one is a per hectare base. So how much farmers actually spend dollars per hectare? And as you can see here, it's somewhere in sugarcane, $1,500 to $2,000 per hectare. And sugar beet is more expensive, $2,500. Yeah, that's a very nice thing to know, but in reality, nobody sells hectares. We sell sugar. So what is important for us in reality is the next one, where we compare dollars per ton, because in the world market, we sell dollars per ton of sugar. And just to give you, I think this is, for me, if you have to remember 3 slides, this is one of those. So this one, what I'm trying to show here is at the farm level. So there is no processing cost. Only at the farm level, you have here cash costs, so cash expenditures, depreciation, opportunity costs. And this is to produce 1 ton of sugar, but the sugar inside the product, so no processing yet. So at the farm gate. And what you can see here, that was for me really scary when I saw it the first time, as this line, that in reality, at the feedstock level, or at the farm level, Brazil is not as cheap as I thought. So we have a lot of opportunity costs, and we are somewhere $200 per ton. There are 2 things that are also interesting in this graph. One of them is Thailand. Thailand is a very productive, very important country, but they are also running some economic difficulties here, because this red dot tells you the price. So in the good world, it should be like this, Maybe not such a margin, but it should be, the red dot should be above the costs, So that's what people selling inputs expect, that you have something to gain. And I think besides of having similar costs, we are running similar conditions in Europe now, also that sugar prices are very close to the margins that of zero. In other words, it's normal. So in reality, you should not have positive profits, because it's, if there should be some arbitrage. So when I look at this, I thought, wow, and then I presented this thing in the ISSCT, and the first question I get, but we don't sell sugar cane, we don't sell sugar beet, we sell sugar. So we need the processing costs. And then we tried to get information on processing costs. And as you can imagine, it's quite difficult, because, I would also not tell my information if I would be a sugar mill. It's very hard for the sugar millers to actually share those informations, because it is the edge that they might have over their competitors. So what we did, we actually looked for the best option, which was to do a joint work with BMA. So we actually, what we thought, so we cannot actually have the real information. So what we do, we sit together and we develop 2 sugar factories. One sugar mill producing sugar cane, and the other one producing sugar beet or processing. So what we did, we took those 2 mills as an engineering approach. So we actually, I'd never learned anything about turbines before, and I had to learn about turbines and conversions and things, but we actually learned how to put those 2 mills to work in different countries, and we decided to do first Brazil and Germany. So when you look at our data, it's not data that we collect, it's data that we, in an engineering approach, try to do it for processing costs. Just to give you an idea, those are 2 rather small mills, 10,000 tons per day of daily capacity processing, and we accounted also for byproducts, and so far we are comparing white sugar to white sugar, but we know in the future we want to compare the real market, so white sugar against raw sugar being exported and refined and to white sugar. So just as for you also have there in your slides, so don't worry too much. Those are some of the assumptions we had to do on investments and the data we got from BMA. And it gets very complex. Just to give an idea, the first time we presented this to the colleagues from BMA, we spent 2.5 hours in 5 slides, I think, because it's really complex. Now, everything that you can change here has a big impact on the final outcome. The first thing I want to show is the sale of byproducts. So when you produce sugar, you have byproducts, and we try to compare here sugarcane to sugar beet. And what you can see here is that we had in Brazil to account ethanol as a byproduct, but as everybody knows, it's more like a co-product because it's not a byproduct, but that's the way we have to do it here. And the other major share of sales is energy. In the sugar beet, we have the molasses pulp, everybody knows that. So I think it's very interesting for us to think about those processes and those byproducts and to see that there is some technical difference. At least for us, when we look, you would see somewhere that sugarcane has some more value on selling byproducts. And maybe that's the second slide that I would like you to keep in mind, is that when you put everything together, no? So this is raw material, no? So that the slide before, the farm level, this is the processing costs, and this is the sales of byproduct. So what you have here is the net costs, no? So the net cost is exactly how much it costs to produce 1 ton of white sugar. I don't want you to memorize 247 because it's just an estimation. But what for us is very important is that we use 2 mills developed by the same company, so they should be somewhere in the same range. And there is some difference in the total costs. No? So at least in our analysis, sugarcane is somewhere $90 per ton cheaper than the sugar beet. And the problem is, at least when looking at sugarcane, depending on what you assume for the prices of ethanol, it gets much lower than this. No? So I think for us, there are several things that are important to keep in mind, but there is some differences. No? Even though at the raw material level, the costs are similar, at least when we put together the industry, then it gets a bit more, the sugarcane has, at least in Brazil, a higher, it's more competitive, I would say. Yeah, maybe a different question for everybody working sugar. I think solutions, even digital solutions, they usually come quicker when you have a problem, no? And I think for a lot of mills, this might be one of the problems. So that's the London 5 price in July, and you see it looks like it's very tight margins, no? And this is the European price, so at least you have some margin there, but it's still very hard, no? So I think a lot of those solutions that we discuss soon, they might fly a bit quicker when we have problems, no? So we've seen that because we asked farmers. We did a project together with John Deere, asking them when they do most adaptation of things. No? And adaptation is also a function of how many problems you have. No? If everything works fine, you're actually making money, so you don't need to change so much. No? When things get tight, then in reality you see people adopting more things than they would do in a situation where everybody does a very good profit. And I think that's one of the lessons that I've been following from the sugar industry in Europe. I think before 2017, everybody was doing very good. And now I think people are actually looking at their own factories and seeing how it can actually be better. Okay, I will just skip this one. This one is just a summary. I think everybody got some of the copy of the slides. And I think what is important for us, and that's why I want to show that beforehand, is that for the whole value chain, we actually need to identify where such a digital solution could have a strong impact. Because at least you will see, I also show in a few minutes, for farmers, they would usually choose solutions that goes after the biggest problem. No? So if we talk about things that and the total costs, the total production are not so important, you might see people not going after it. No? And here it's some more summary of the production cost side. And I think that the most important part is that when we look at the adaptation rate and how people react to solutions, one of the main criteria for farmers, it has to be profitable. So, and I think this is for us, when we travel to conferences, we usually see a lot of solutions. Now we see a lot of people showing platforms and things. I think that's quite nice. But if you look at least in what we follow, there is not so much discussion on how much is the benefit for farmers, no? At least in the farm level. I think there is more on the industry level, but for the farmers, not so much. So now I come to actually what we want to discuss, and I have to start with a very bad information. No? I would not give you a number, no, to tell you like, you put your money there, you get so much an investment. It's really hard because as you see here, most of these solutions, they might be very profitable at your farm, but it might not be profitable in the neighboring farm. So it's very, very site-specific. As my colleague mentioned before, it's very special, so everybody has a special situation. No? So maybe, that's not a good, okay, so the picture should be somewhere other, but that's okay. Maybe what has happened so far in the farm level, no? Farm level digitalization. So as you can see, most of the Western farms, they would already be using somewhere based on GPS technology. No? So that's the Google Maps for farming. No? So what happens is that farmers, if they use this type of solutions, the first solution will be auto track, so you don't have to turn the wheel anymore, so the tractor knows where to go. A second solution, which is quite a bit newer, it's section control. So if you're applying herbicide and you, by mistake, go over an area which you have applied before, the machine turns off automatically so that you don't over-apply. So those are solutions that we've seen a very strong adaptation because they are very easy to use, and it's very easy to see the performance. No? Because for farmers, it means, first of all, I don't know if anybody from you has been on a harvester for more than 10 hours. If you don't have to turn the wheel yourself, it sounds like, but if you do it for 10 hours, you would pay money to not do it, no? Because it's really hard. And if you harvest a sugar beet field, you always have to look that you harvest exactly in the row. And if you don't have to do that anymore, it means for you less stress and more efficiency in your machine. No? So this type of technology has been adopted, and I think when we talk about digitalization, I don't know if this one is already status quo or if something to come. I would say it's more status quo. Then the second one that you cannot see too, it's the will be variable rate of application. I think at the farm level, this is I would say the more medium-term type of technology. It means that you apply what you need for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium to an area. No? So you don't actually apply 200 kilos all over the place. So you know exactly, we do the same. No? When we go to the physician, they don't give us a medicine for ear infection and everything at once. No? We actually use things for one purpose. So this variable rate of application, it's very interesting because you actually optimize your plants. No? So if you have an area where you have a higher yield potential, you apply more. And if you have an area with lower yield potential, you apply less. This one is one that it has been discussed a lot, and it's being also implemented with sensoring and satellite photos and droning. That is quite interesting as a background for the farmers, so they actually know with sensors you can actually see what is the health condition of the plants. So you can actually use a satellite picture to see how much nitrogen is missing on your plants. So you can actually go and apply what you need. No? So this is something that's quite useful. The biggest problem here is not at the farm level. The biggest problem will be also from our colleagues, lawyers. No? The problem is that those pictures, they are all processed together by the European Commission, and it take them 3 years to give you the picture back. No? So it's not very useful, but it could be used. No? In some other countries, they are more free on the information transfer, so it's quite easy for farmers to use. And I think what everybody is at the farm level waiting for, it's the so-called big data. No? I think people have in their mind very different pictures what it should be, but the idea here is to have tools that actually help farmers making decisions. No? Because so far, if you look at auto-track variable rate of applications, is that really digital solutions? Because in reality, I get the information, but who decides what to apply? No? It's still the farmer most of the times. No? So I think for a lot of people, the expectation now is actually to have an algorithms or to have a solution that will decide for the farmer, no? At least to give a better decision. And I just can give you an example for what we did for beef production in Brazil. We look at, because when you do beef, you have to decide when is the best time for finishing, no? For slaughtering the beef. And we asked people from the industry with 25 years of experience to tell you which day is the day for slaughtering. And we had an algorithms learning, no? from data without the expertise, and 95% of the times the farmer was wrong. No? So it was not the best day to sell because of the price, and it's too much information usually for one person to decide. So I think the big data is something that everybody's waiting for, and I think we are not there yet for a lot of solutions because it's really hard to find now a platform that people can use for that. What I mean by that, those are the people involved in digitalization, as if you can call it like this, in agriculture. No? So you all the very big players now, Bayer, Monsanto, Pioneer, you have those new guys doing a lot of very interesting research. The problem is then, I don't think there's nobody from John Deere here, but we were in a conference from the Deutsche Bauernverband, and they were all explaining My John Deere. So My John Deere means your tractor sends information to a John Deere cloud, and you can actually use this information to better understand your fields. But for that, the farmer has to sign a consent form saying that the data can be used for his own farm, no? So because it goes somewhere and comes back. And then they asked the guy from John Deere how many people in the northern German are using My John Deere. And the guy was a bit like this because he had to answer 2. No? So it's really, the solution is there. And I would also fully subscribe with my colleague from the IT. I don't think it's too much on the technical part. No? I think this technical part is much easier to code than this trust part. No? There's a very strong position for farmers here. No, because very, very, very simple example. If John Deere knows exactly what you do, they know exactly how much money you make. They know exactly how to precify the tractors. No? So it's a really hard decision of how much to use and how much you can get it back. Another very interesting one will be this the Climate Corporation. I don't know, most people should be aware of this company. It was it's the Instagram for agriculture digitalization. It was bought by several companies, but it used to belong to Monsanto. And they have a very, very interesting solution you can see in their website where you put your area and they actually give you recommendations of application rates. And there is a big discussion in the agricultural sector that Bayer bought Monsanto, not for glyphosate, not for GM, but for Climate Corporation, no? Because it's a very strong tool. 25% of the farmers in the US are using. In Germany, I think it's not even known by some of the farmers, but it still has a potential. No? And that's one of the things that I know for some things, for some technologies, Europe is sometimes very, very risk averse. And it means the expectation sometimes is that the companies would adjust itself to provide to Europe. But what can happen is also the company says, we do the rest of the world. No? Because if you look at GM, technology is the same. Why GM? No, if you don't want GM, everybody else wants it, so we do it for the rest of the world. So if you are too picky, you might be left behind, no? Because it's easier to sell to people that are less picky. No? And maybe if I can try to put together where you can save money in the sugar industry, no? So what I have here, I'm only comparing Brazil and Germany, and I'm so happy that Thomas did this, and he did it Brazil in the right way, so I'm surprised. And as you can see here, these are total costs. So the idea is to look at where in the supply chain probably solutions could save up money. And as you can see in sugar beet, one big area is herbicides and seeds. No? So that might be one area that digital solutions could have a very strong impact because that makes a large share of the production costs. So solutions from those areas, they should be quickly adopted by farmers. And as you can see here, in reality, if you look at 1 ton of sugar, 60% of the cost comes from the farm. No? So we need to pay attention that even though the industry might be running fast enough to go up to digitalization, we need to look at the farm as well, because those two, they depend on each other very strongly, no? Which is not the case for grains, for instance. No? My perspective is that one of the main areas, at least when I look at sugarcane, that digital solutions could be very important is operations, harvesting, loading, transportation. And when you talk about digitalization, you think about very nice softwares and variable rate of application, but there might be a low-hanging fruit. No? Harvesting, loading, it's much easier to save money there than it is on seeds. I can tell you that, because on seeds you need soil map, you need sensors, you need a very expensive machine, and for harvesting, loading, transportation, you need a software that tells the farmer, now it's your day to harvest. It sounds like basic, but it can save you much more money in economic terms than it can save you if you do a very nice algorithms for seeds. No? And I've seen at least the software for Nord Sugar, for instance, it's hard to implement, but if you see the demand from technical equipment is very low. No? Because, if you look at a variable rate of application of nitrogen, you need at least one sensor for nitrogen measuring. You need this special machine for fertilization. And for harvesting, loading, you don't need those things. In reality, in our view, as I'm more on the farm, only 10 to 25% of the cost is actually processing costs. So even though you can save a lot of money by changing logistics, it might be harder to do that on the industrial part. No? I'm not saying you should not do it. I'm just saying that if you have to invest €1, it might have other areas where you can actually get a higher benefit. And how we actually look at this, we see that we did a project together with John Deere to look at what is the actual impact, no? What is the dollar or the euro sign of one technology, no? And the way we look at it, you have like the status quo, and you have costs, revenue, and margins, and then there are some technologies that will save you in inputs or increase your yields. No? At the end, you have this economic headroom. It's a very strange word, but it only means how much money is left. No? So you save money there, and then the question is then, from what is left, how much it goes to the farmer, how much it goes to the service provider. No? And here, I give you a full... we did a very strong with people from the University of Tristov in Germany, and we try to look how much is the yield potential, how much is the saving potential. And the problem here is that it gives you anything from 10 to 35%, so it's really hard to look at it, because it could give you a very large range to work on. And this one is for a variable rate of applications. And as you can see here, you can have an yield increase of 0%. Even if you do everything as the guy selling the tool tell you, you might not change at all your yield because it depends a lot on the weather conditions. So what we did, we did a joint workshop and we worked together with 2 companies to try to actually measure. Because when you talk to farmers, it's quite easy that if you don't have a dollar sign, it would be very hard for them to see the value of what you're selling. And we did it for those countries, US, Canada, Australia, and Sweden. And but this here is not for sugar. Sorry, this is for wheat and corn, because we don't have yet one single tool for farming that we can actually analyze for sugar yet. We only have these photos and things that are mainly done for grain so far. And what you can see here, you can have a combination of revenue saving plus input saving, so revenue generation, input saving. And it could give us 8 euros per hectare more. It doesn't tell you much, but it's a lot of money for farmers. But the problem is that if farmers do that, they might get anything. Oh, it's also wrong here. But it might you give anything from 8 euros per ton to, I don't know what happened to this slide, but it should be here, Australia and other countries as well. It can be 0. So it's really hard for us to assess. So what I think is that there is a strong potential, but I think we should move from digitalization workshops to very specific areas and actually give a dollar sign to the solutions. And maybe just to give one example on sugar, we did some work for a mill or research project for a mill in Kenya, and we just look at optimization of harvesting loading, because as you all know, for sugarcane it's quite important the timing of actually harvesting and delivery, and they usually had 48 hours, and that means a lot of losses. So we look at that, what would happen if you go under to 12 hours, that would be a Brazilian standard, and they're harvesting in the right time. And here, this is some pictures of the mill, very bad performance. This should give you a very... When I was there in 2016-17, it has been the second year that they install a boiler to burn the bagasse. So they used to sell the bagasse and buy energy. So it was really interesting to see that you have these still very, very, very different systems. And what you can see here is that the mill now does what they tell you is 11% of recoverable. So they are somewhere $200 per ton. In reality, what they actually do is 7% recoverable. So it goes up to 350. So you can see the difference. And if they would do the Brazilian recoverable, they would go under 200. So what I want to say here is that you can do a lot of optimization, a lot of digitalization. If your cane is not delivered on time, then it's not actually bringing you so much in economic terms. Yeah, so from the production cost side and the farming side, we always believe that there's something coming. I think today the colleague mentioned something about the German way of waiting that something better is coming. I think that might be our idea as well. We are expecting somebody to do it, because the problem is now nobody trusts the farmers. They don't trust the big companies that have the money to do it. So Bayer, Monsanto, and the people that they trust, probably the government, don't have money or interest to do it. So who is supposed to do it? I don't know, maybe BMAs, I don't know. But we expect it to be a game changer, because you actually, these solutions, we always talk about currency and everything, but they also bring a lot of ecological benefits and everything. But somebody has to invest on it. And for us, it's very clear that the potential of those tools depend a lot on the intensity level that you are. Because if you're in a very high intensity level, as will be sugar beet in Europe, if you can save 2%, it makes a lot of sense. So you can have an absolute gain. But if you are still in an infant industry, and it's much more common than we actually believe, then we might need other steps first before we go to these type of solutions. And I think it will be, our belief is that it will also make a very big difference between the regions. If some regions can actually install and set up certain systems, they might also overcome some biological problems that you might have in your region if you're actually able to use the information that you have and actually be able to do decisions with this information. Yeah, what we see as a problem for the sugar industry. For us here, sugar is, I was born 5 kilometers from the sugar mill, but sugar is still, as a crop, a very small crop. And the other companies like Bayer, Monsanto, they invest a lot on digital solutions, but they probably invest on corn, soybeans, wheat, because those solutions they can sell everywhere. No? And I think this is one of the challenges of the sugar industry, that probably the sugar mill or the sugar suppliers will need to invest a lot to generate such a solutions for the farmers, because it might not come from the normal worldwide suppliers as it does for corn and wheat. No? So that's one of the problems. But what we see as a very strong potential for the sugar industry is the connection between farm and industry, no? Because that's not given in most of the other crops. So in reality, you could trace back your sugar to the exact plot where the sugar beet was grown. And this is a very interesting machine learning process, that you know exactly what you did, and you know what is the result at the mill. And this you can get only at the sugar sector, because you have usually information from those two areas. In Brazil, it's quite easy because the sugar fields also belong to the mill. So you actually have full access to everything. So I think those solutions, they might be easy to run up, because one problem that I could see is that if Nord Sugar or Pfeifferlang would have a solution for farmers to actually help them improve their costs and everything, would also mean that the farmers have to provide the mill with the production costs. And that might also be some problems in there as a conflict of interest also. Yeah, and I think it's, as I said before, there is a big problem there on the trust between the mills, or between the farmers and the industry. And there is a very technical benefit of the sugar beet compared to other crops, and that's a very simple thing, that sugar beet is grown in rows. No? So it's quite, it might sound really, but for instance, we have a project now trying to develop self-running robots. No? So small. So why do we need a big tractor? Why we have big tractors? Besides that, all farmers are also like small kids playing with Lego. We need small tractors to reduce the human investment, no? Because if you have a big tractor, your labor is more efficient because you can do more acreage. But if you don't have the human element anymore, you don't need the big tractors. You can have a bunch of small machinery doing the work for you. And we did a project together with the University of TU in Braunschweig, and it's quite interesting because we don't have yet the technology to do that, but in economic terms, it would work out, because the robots in sugarcane, sugar beet, they could walk, they recognize a weed, and it's like a mechanical finger that does like this and press the weed down. So I think this is one of the advantages of sugar beet, but it's more for a near future. Yeah, I'm sorry for a lot of costly information, but I think for us, we would like to discuss a bit more what goes next, no? Because I don't think we have to tell people anymore how important digitalization is, no? And I think a lot of people are just trying to find ways to postpone the decisions, saying, we don't know yet what it means. And I think in our opinion, we should be able now to actually evaluate solutions, as BMA has now for the sugar mill. So we should be able to actually see things happening. Thank you very much, and sorry if I go over the time a bit.